I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. So, all right. So we also, I think by now everybody has seen. I hope at least everybody, especially those being critical or defending him, have seen the latest episode or the last edition of Chappelle's Netflix series titled "The Closer." And this piece here in Yahoo Entertainment, Dear White People, executive producer is done with Netflix over Dave Chappelle's new transphobic special. Comic lambasted by GLAAD, the LGBTQ plus advocacy group for ridiculing trans and LGBTQ plus communities. Did you want to offer any thoughts initially before we look at this? Because I think there are a couple good points that this piece makes, and then there are a bunch that I don't agree with. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for one, I think a lot of times, a lot of the discussion ends up being about things that he didn't even really say, and it's much, and it's more of a kind of a general kind of reaction to things that other people have said, and some of the stuff is, definitely centered around some of the things that he did say. But in terms of this, I just, this whole notion, the whole point he was making coming out of the gate in terms of the baby is being proved actually by this particular kind of response. You can pretty much you can defame Black people in general. But when it comes to this particular issue, all of a sudden Black people and others are up in arms, and yet Black people are defamed all the time. I think that's basically the point he was making when he was talking about the situation with the baby. And nobody cares when it only affects us, and this is something I've been saying, for years and years. I mean, whether it's LGBTQ, now they will start talking about Black people, or they will amplify Black voices as long as Black people, repeat, the talking points, or at least agree with what they have to say, but there's really no diversity in terms of ideas. Pretty much on the left, I would have to say, the so-called left. It's almost as if we don't like something that you say, then automatically we're just going to cancel you, or you're just automatically over in this corner, and we don't want to have any discussion, which is kind of wild to me, because the left always posits itself as being so open-minded. But when it comes to certain issues, and it's just like almost very similar to what happens with Zionists, with what they do with Zionism. Any kind of critique, any kind of disagreement is always posited as if the person is hates that particular group, when it's in fact they just have some disagreements, or they make, sometimes the disagreements may be valid or not, but the fact is that there's no diversity of thought, there's no diversity of opinion, unless you're saying exactly what I want you to say, unless you're agreeing with me, then all of a sudden you're a bad person. And I just think that that's dangerous. And we're seeing that not just in this situation, we're seeing it all over the place when it comes to censorship, and it's creeping up. And they typically will use fringe issues, they meaning the powers that be, the power structures, the Facebooks. We've seen that recently coming up in the news, the social media platforms, etc. They typically will use fringe issues that they know will divide people, and then use that as a veneer to kind of creep in with all of this, with this censorship. And we saw it with Trump and others as well. And so I think we're seeing the same thing here.
Okay, so again, I get the I already hear some in I already hear the legit criticism that we are two cis het, at least 1.5 black men talking about. That sounds like a new TV show. I'm
I
telling you,
know,
all
right?
these shows, it's gonna be me and you is gonna be 1.5 black men. Me and two black is the two black and not black enough show. We're gonna keep going with this, but so I get that, and that's why I have reached out to some folks, and um the my expanding, or our expanding I Mix What I Like staff is going to help put together some more programming on this as well. So this won't be, of course, the last word, and I'm happy to have people reach out as comrades. I'm not inviting some nonsense, so, and I don't want people to think that my attempt at a peaceable tone is welcoming a bunch of should be an invitation for some nonsense. But I am happy to be checked as a comrade, and to have people send me some suggestions, or to reach out to people and see if they'd like to come on. But my immediate reaction to stories like this, and the one that came out at NPR, I think there's one in Vulture. I mean, there's been a bunch of stories, and even what I've seen a lot on Twitter, it seems to be driven by, as is the case here, with what is another problem of mine, a show titled after the film Dear White People, which I also had a problem with, which having black discussions targeted at white audiences. And here is a white trans, my focus being white executive producer on Dear White People, which to me says everything, saying that Dave should be removed and canceled, and people should consider leaving Netflix, that Dave stuff should be taken off of Netflix, and so on. So
And
that's
yet,
one
and yet,
yeah.
when Monique was saying this, when Monique was calling for Netflix to be canceled because they were not paying her, equitably, she didn't hardly get it anywhere near the support from these same people, that are coming for Chappelle. They didn't. We didn't hear that. They were quiet. They're always quiet when it's only black people. And then when it affects, when it touches them, then they'll try to bring it. Well, black people are in this community too, but you're not doing it for the black people in that community, which is why years ago I interviewed, two people who represented the Black Great Gay Pride parade that they have every year. And I asked them kind of sheepishly, like, and one of them actually was white. There was a black person who was in a partnership with a white person. It was actually a black woman in partnership with a white woman. And I asked kind of sheepishly, why do y'all have to have a black one? I mean, shouldn't aren't y'all all together? And the white woman jumped in and was like, hell no, it's right because the white people are racist. And she said that. So again, they're race first, and then they try to use us, and then it ends up dividing us along the way. So I just, I'm sorry for jumping in, but
no, that's fine. But there were at least 2 points that have been raised, even in I think one of them is in this article, and another one is being raised by, and I even agree with our dear sister Kim, Burn It Down, Kim Brown, in her argument with me on Twitter, and I believe it was her position on the remix, that this wasn't made here. I know they didn't make this argument here. But that that Dave's argument erases black trans experience, because he doesn't say anything about black trans people in his routine. But the two things that are moving to me in this piece are, one, that he confuses, like J.K. Rowling, apparently, sex with gender. I thought that argument was compelling. So when he said gender is a fact to make his point about the biological component, he conflates sex and gender. I think that's a legit argument, and something that he could be checked on, should be checked on, and I think he could easily correct. Of course, gender is the social construct, sex is the biological argument. So even in his argument, whether people agree or not, he conflates that. I agree with that. The other one that I thought was somewhat moving is this argument around the TERF, or trans exclusionary radical feminist, that he says he is happily a part of, and that there are trans people who I think could logically be said to have a response to that, to reading anything that's defined as trans exclusionary radical feminism, even if I think I understand and agree with the underlying argument, which, if we're going to make some sort of anecdotal reference, uh, um, members of the Black LGBTQ community who at least one who maneuvers in my personal circles has agreed with this point, that there needs to be a distinction made between biological women and trans women. That they feel that there is some sort of, now they didn't use the language that he used in his routine about blackface, that white trans people who claim minority oppression are performing blackface. But it was that same kind of logic in the argument, which I do understand, I think, and probably agree with. Spend more time thinking about that. But those 2 points in this sort of grand narrative or dominant narrative criticism of Chappelle, either I agree with or at least resonate with me, and I understand. But largely what I'm seeing and feeling or responding to, rather, is what are criticisms that are coming out of liberal political spaces. So even in response to my colleague Joshua, I'm asking him to put me in touch with analyses that are coming from the Black radical trans community. I'm not interested in an NPR, Huffington Post, blue check Twitter, Democratic Party argument, because to me, the broader politics of those arguments are disingenuous. So if Jackie Luqman is going to disagree with me, I'm much more willing to hear that, because I understand the political world from which she's emanating.
Exactly.
But these arguments, and this grand dismissal of Dave as transphobic, and erasing Black trans people, I struggle with that. So that's the part that
well, it's just the same thing that white feminists have done with Black men, that just Black men in general. And we, I know you've had some conversations with people on that, particularly Dr. Curry, but they've done the same thing with Black men. And I can remember even way back in the day looking at a debate on Democracy Now! Between Gloria Steinem and Melissa Harris Perry.
Yeah.
And that was a phenomenal debate within that whole piece, because it was around the time when Obama was running. Now I ain't saying that we should be all for Obama, because Perry was basically saying that we should vote for Obama. This is around that time. And old girl was saying that he's still a man, and this and that, and they should go for Clinton. But the substance of their debate, though, was outstanding. It was phenomenal, and Perry just mopped her up and down the floor. It was just amazing to see. So we've seen these kinds of arguments before from the white communities that represent all of these different other communities on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. So all right, that was, anyway, for now at least, those are the only points I wanted to make this morning. Unless you have any more, we can move on. But
well, again, I want to go back to Dave's point.
No, sure, go ahead.
The first point, though, I think we got to really start thinking about this and having some serious conversations.
Sure, go ahead.
Because now we use the N-word all the time. We don't have a problem with that. That, and some Black people do have a problem with that, and a lot of us still use it. Now we'll use that and then, and basically defame ourselves. But then we jump to the defense, of the LGBTQ community. And I understand that. But if you're going to have a standard, if you don't want to use a slur, then don't use a slur. Then don't use it for yourself. Don't use it for Black people too. But again, that's the point he was making. You can defame Black people, even if you're Black. You can defame Black people, but you can't defame that community. And we have to have really hard conversations, because I understand that we are in love with that word, and a lot of us will call ourselves that word while still criticizing other Black people for defaming the LGBTQ community, which I find fascinating. And I think we really need to have some deep conversations with ourselves as to why we're so attached to that word. I've seen, and not here, but I've seen crazy not conspiracy theory, but theories of people talking about it coming from, the Ethiopian and the Gast and Negus and all this. It's just nonsense.
Oh, right, Negus. Yeah,
it's just
King
all
and all
kinds
of
of
that.
nonsense. My thing is, look, if you want to say the word, just say that, but don't come up with all this wild stuff. But my larger point is that, we defame ourselves and nobody has a problem. These people in Hollywood don't have a problem. The same people with the Dear White People and all these other folks, they don't have a problem with black people. NPR doesn't have a problem with black people coming on there doing the tiny desk, calling ourselves all kinds of crazy names, talking bad about our community, about our people, talking about selling drugs and this and that. But all of a sudden now Hollywood's ready to shut down this black man because he's talking about that particular group. And again, I know that there are black people in the LGBTQ community, but they're not talking about the black people. They're only upset because it's touching them. They don't give a damn if it was touching black people only. So that's the point I'm making. And the whole point about black trans people, black trans women being killed and so forth. Disproportionately that particular community, the larger white trans community, they don't speak on that either, except when they want to make a larger point of that it will include themselves. They always use us as cannon fodder. They always use us because we are the great cheerleaders. We are the great spokespeople. We are the great people. We give energy to all these groups. I've been a week from tomorrow, it will make 26 years that I've been plant-based, or what they call, I don't even call myself vegan, but technically that's what it is. And I've had debates over decades with white people who try to say that, whales being killed are just like Africans being enslaved, and all, making all these comparisons between. They do it all the time. They do it all the time.
Oh,
they do
wow.
it. But when black people are being killed in the street, they ain't got shit to say. I don't see them out there marching with us. So it's the same principle, but just in a different context here. Yeah, go ahead.
Years ago, I gave a presentation in which I made reference to Emory Douglas's work and where police were referred to as pigs. And I had a white hippie type come up to me afterwards, and as politely as he could, he was suggesting that we not use that language in reference to police because it denigrates the animal. The pig is the animal, and we should, as vegans and this and that, want to respect the animal. And I was like, my man, I was like, you're doing too much right now. Whatever the version of that was, or that phrase was at the time, I was like, I'm not trying to hear that. And I'm not, I have happily not eaten pigs I can't even remember, since childhood. But so I'm with you on that, but I'm not interested in these kinds of comparisons and checking the language of certainly black revolutionaries of the past. Never mind anybody today making reference to, call them what you want. I'm not worried about that. Anyway, so, but I agree. So on the one hand, I agree with the criticism. I think Dave should have had some sort of, it would have been better if Dave had some sort of reference to black trans and their experiences as he's making his points. I think that would have helped solidify his point. But at the same time, he is a comedian. He's not he's not even really a radical. He's not really even a black radical. He's just, I think he's just a thoughtful, critically thinking, hilarious comedic genius. But I didn't take. Again, I understand that I'm not situated maybe to catch this, but I didn't see him as even attempting to erase black trans, because my reaction was he is automatically including them as part of the black community, which is his broader concern and focus. And that's why he's, as he said in the piece, I'm talking about white folks. He was like, that's why, that was what he was clear on. It wasn't even to me as much an issue of with trans community as much as it was with white people who want to cloak themselves in some radical oppressed minority grouping now that they have gone through a trans experience. And that's the part I'm with you on that. Like, I don't think, and when he said that line, it was easier for Caitlyn Jenner to change her gender than Cassius Clay to change his name. That was just bars to me, as I think the young folks say. Like, so Anyway, yeah.
Somebody down, in Logan Circle or DuPont Circle, some of them white folks down there that are LGBTQ. I'm not oppressing them. Okay, I do not have any privilege over them white folks down there in DuPont Circle, or if I walk down there and they call the police, and and if they were assaulting me and they were trying to beat me up, the police would probably arrest my black ass. Okay,
when we were,
because it's race, they're white. Okay, that's the point. And I'll also say, even if he would have brought up black trans in that special, and the fact that he pointed out white people, that he was talking about white people, they still would have came for him, I think. Now, I think we probably would have had less of an argument, so from the black people, and I get that part, or maybe not, because some of our people are kind of connected to some of those other communities, particularly those doing advocacy. I think Brother Hiram made a good point yesterday about that in terms of people getting their monies and stuff. So sometimes protest is actually profitable sometimes, and sometimes people are kind of like playing it up a little bit too. So there's some of that in there too.
I one thing I did mean to bring up is that one of the in a lot of the stories that are being reported, there is this group being touted as
it's a black group,
the National Black Justice Coalition,
right?
And when you look them up, David Johns, their spokesperson or leader or founder or whatever, since 2003, it seems that they've been around. I had never heard of them, but as it says from their own write-up, the National Black Justice Coalition. Well, I mean, let me just share this, because actually their website wasn't working. I don't know if they were getting so much traffic that it crashed. So I had to get this from sort of another site that is linked to them. But the National Black Justice Coalition is a civil rights organization dedicated to the empowerment of Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer and same gender loving people, including people living with HIV/AIDS. So my point is, they're coming out as, pun intended, I guess, as or no pun intended, as the National Black Justice Coalition, as if they are this Black community collective leadership justice group. But when you look at them, not only in terms of their description and focus, but you look at David John's background, he comes out of the Democratic Party, he comes out of working in Congress and working for different senators and in the Democratic Party. He comes out of the Urban League. He comes out of that establishment liberal civil rights community that I don't know all the inner workings of their organization, but I'm sure does benefit financially from issues like this. It does have that ambulance chasing similarity when I see, for instance, the ADL come out and wave its claims and arms, particularly about Black anti-Semitism. It is a fundraising mechanism for them. So I don't know as much about the NBJC, and which I think is in part the point that for those of us who have been engaged in variations of Black activism and politics for a long time, they've been around since 2003. I don't hear about them. I don't see them. I don't, they don't maneuver in spaces I work in politically because I don't work with Democratic, liberal, establishment civil rights organizations that I think don't have the kind of appropriate politics that we need to address the situation here. So, but anyway, so they get a lot of mention and shine and discussion, and then to become the spokespeople for the Black community all of a sudden. But again, not so much is my concern on their focus on LGBTQ plus communities. It's the political matrix that they're coming out of to claim the mantle as the National Black Justice Coalition, using this as their.
And I bet you that donations are going to go up astronomically because of this. Yeah. Just like the NAACP's been doing for years, just like Jesse Jackson's been doing for years. It's the same hustle.
Al Sharpton, the whole model.
Al Sharpton, all of them. It's the same hustle.
All right. So, all right, like I said, we will come back to this. There's I'm happy to continue the discussion. And in fact, I can announce now real quick, somewhat related. because I know we don't agree on this particular issue, but just
Really?
confirm, sister. No, not you and me. I'm talking about
okay.
Sister Jackie Lukman is going to
Okay.
be co-hosting with me Monday on I Mix What I Like Live, where we're going to talk in part about her recently published piece in Hood Communist and elsewhere about the white supremacy of Candyman. So I get to revisit my own revolutionary violence argument regarding that film. And by the way, I was right. The people in the chat were wrong. The black girl killed in the Candyman film was a flashback to the original, not killed by Nia DaCosta's Candyman. So I knew it. I told you he didn't kill any black people. I'm telling you. So we'll revisit that, and we'll revisit Jackie's thought. Oh, I think this is. I don't often recommend commercial media stuff, but this would be one, especially if you have any affinity for the horror genre or just a regular movie night of sorts. But as Hollywood films go, this is doing something I think that is very interesting. So Jackie has a strong piece on it. We're going to talk about that on Monday with her, as well as any of her thoughts on Chappelle and other stuff that we're going to get to that I don't even know what it will be yet. So all right, so let's just take a quick break and come back and get to a couple other of these stories before we get to our next hour discussion on psilocybins and therapy. Back in just a second. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.